Well, welcome to another edition of Career Conversations. I'm Herda-Rapp. I'm the campus executive at UW-Stevens Point at Wausau. And in this installment, we're going to talk natural resources. And joining us today, we have two folks. We have Nick. Nick, how do you say your last name?
Nick Hovda.
Nick Hovda and Tim Parks, and both work for the DNR. And I'm going to turn to them next so they can actually tell us a little bit more about themselves. So Nick, do you want to get us started?
Sure. Yeah, I'll go ahead. So my name is Nick Hovda. I'm a forester ranger for the Department of Natural Resources. Born and raised in Wausau. I'm stationed out of the Rib Mountain office, so I'm close to home. So I really have grown up in this community, and I really appreciate working close to where I grew up. So it's wonderful. Part of my daily duties, so I do quite a variety of stuff. So I'm a firefighter, a wildland firefighter. So I deal with all of the wildfires in Marathon County, as well as all of the timber sales on public lands that are state owned. So I do, in the fall and the winter, I change my cap. I'm out there cruising timber, marking timber. In the springtime, I'm fighting fire and doing some prescribed fires as well. So I get quite the variety of stuff to do here. So it's quite fun.
And how long have you been in the job?
So I've been with the department just over 3 years now. I've been in the forestry industry for about 5 years.
Cool. Tim?
Hi, I'm Tim Parks. I am a fisheries biologist for Marathon and Portage counties, and that's where I manage fish populations, habitat, fishery properties, and also human elements of fisheries. And just like Nick, I'm out of the Rib Mountain office, and I live in Wausau, so quite convenient, and feel fairly lucky to be around here. I didn't grow up here like Nick did, but it's pretty fantastic. I love the city. I love the being so close to the river, and also tons of trout streams and really awesome recreational opportunities. But yeah, I kind of like Nick. I have a lot of interesting duties. I assess and monitor a bunch of fish populations using all sorts of interesting methods. Basically, I do that. I do a lot of management responsibilities, whether it's create regulations, develop regulations, do habitat manipulations, stock fish, try to do habitat restoration, environmental review, you kind of name it in that sort of way to really enhance and maintain and protect certain aspects of water resources and specifically fish populations. But it's a pretty well-rounded job. But typically when I'm not doing the fish specific stuff, I have a various load of other integrated work. Like I actually work a lot with folks like Nick, and Nick specifically too, on things where, trying to have timber sales on some of the properties that I manage, which are fishery properties, and coming up with the best sort of ways so we're not stepping on each other's toes and impacting the resource, but then also trying to have like one solid goal as an agency. So we're working together quite a bit. But yeah, so it's a mix of property management of humans and stakeholders. And
The people are the hardest, aren't they?
Oh yeah, it's it seems like you can have a little bit easier time of manipulating like the other aspects of what you do, but yeah, humans, it's like it could be psychological war some days. So, but I mean, beyond that, it's really good to get to know like who's out there and who's appreciating it, and so there's some very lovely people that I work with. So,
and you guys are both UWSP grads, right?
Correct.
Yep.
Right, Nick?
Yep, I'm out of Stevens Point as well, so it's that's a great school.
Good.
Yeah,
right.
That was my undergrad, and my graduate school. I went elsewhere. I went to Iowa State University. So
cool, and it's awesome. I think maybe we underestimate the importance of this. To me, it's really awesome to be able to live and work in a beautiful place with all kinds of amenities around us. Like having lived in a metropolitan area, I can say this, very large metropolitan area, it's awesome to live in a place that's beautiful like this with lots of opportunities.
Oh,
Oh,
absolutely. Like
for sure.
I feel like there's very few urban centers that have the nature interface that this necessarily does, or how close you are to particular opportunities like this. And so that's a big perk, you know.
Yeah.
We could be
As a
living out in the country bumpkin area, right, Nick? You know.
live out in the town of Maine. Oh, that's a great place
Mhm.
too. If you're a recreational enthusiast and you love to be outside, Marathon County and Wausau in general, it's tough to find something not to do out here. Whether it be hunting, hiking around the woods, snowshoeing, biking, skiing. We got a huge ski hill right there too. And yeah, I live pretty close to it, so I get to
Mhm.
reap the benefits quite a bit. So
Yeah.
it's a wonderful place. Yeah, it's tough to find stuff not to do around here.
Well, let me start with you, Tim, with a question.
Sure.
So when and how did you discover your purpose? Like, how did you become interested in this career choice?
Wow. That's a pretty that's an interesting one, mate. I mean, wow. Maybe when I was like a little kid, you know, I grew up in Madison, and I don't know, my dad had time for me to go like fishing from at various times, but like, you know, he wasn't, you know, he had to be busy as an adult, and so I kind of had to like find my way and get around, and I didn't really have money for boats or anything fancy like that, so like I found myself learning how to fish in like streams and creeks, and or go to like public access areas along Lake Monona. And I don't know, just like, oh, that's cool, that's interesting. Or like you want to kind of figure out what the natural world, you know, how it works. Plus, and then I don't know, there's some other aspects of like trying to understand. It's like, man, why do some people really exploit, you know, these resources hard, and some people really care. And so it's like there's certain things like that, I think, that kind of drove me towards that sort of thing. And plus I think it was just all around, I was like, being outside is cool, and and you know, working with fish is cool. And so that was really kind of a huge drive for me to be like, all right, you're gonna go through a heck of a lot of schooling, buddy. You know, like, I mean, I didn't tell myself that at the beginning, but I knew it was gonna be kind of like a challenge and stuff. But like, it pushed me. So that was a big thing of my passion. So
Good. How about you, Nick? How did you come to this?
Yeah, it's similar to Tim. It started from a young age. I wouldn't say I knew I'd be growing up and working in the natural resources. Growing up in my parents' land and scouting out the woods and seeing what the woods had to offer at a young age, I think really lit the fire. And it throughout my college career and more classes, I'm like, oh, you can get paid to walk around the woods. Okay, this sounds like a pretty neat gig, and it sort of blossomed out from there. And yeah, just being interested in the natural resources, knowing what trees are. At a young age, I didn't know what a pine tree was, and didn't know what a spruce between a pine tree, and all this stuff. And now you can really immerse yourself in what you're looking at instead of just being outside and um, just becoming a professional in it, and an expert in it too. It's just quite the cool thing to be a part of, and really base your life off of.
So how did you prepare to be a forester? What was the path?
Well, I think it started with just taking some general biology courses. From there, I wasn't quite sure what to do with that. And then wildlife kind of piqued my interest. I'm like, wildlife seems pretty neat. I like working with animals and stuff like that. And fisheries seem pretty cool what Tim's doing. And I sort of played around with that. And then conservation officer kind of popped into my head. And I'm like, oh, maybe I'll be a conservation officer. And then forestry popped into across my desk, and it really encompassed a lot of those fields into one. Forestry, we get to work with wildlife, we get to work with fisheries, and that just kind of brings everybody together. You're trying to accomplish one goal, and under forestry, we kind of play a lot of roles, and we manage for a lot of things. And that kind of drove me to my career choice and why I wanted to be a forester.
And forestry, really, Nick, like that is like the mechanism for like habitat management for wildlife. And not a lot of people really consider that, but that's like a huge thing. Dr. Demchek, who's a forester, he's been doing a lot more stuff that not just relates to timber stand management, but like, you know, in the long run, it's like habitat management for either game species or like, you know, on an ecological restoration front. So like
Yeah.
it's you're right, it's like really well-rounded. And so yeah.
So how did you prepare, Tim? How did you get to this?
Oh, like the fisheries thing? Well, you know, I kind of had this very similar thing of kind of discovery epiphany where like, you know, I didn't, you know, I sort of knew that like there would be school options for this sort of thing, but I, you know, it was so, you know, outside of my mind where I was like, oh, how do I do such things? But like, you know, fortunately, you know, there was a program in my state to be like, all right, check out what Stevens Point has to offer. So it was like first seeking out Stevens Point, figuring out from there, it's like, all right, this is what I can do. And kind of learning from the get-go that it's like, all right, I can begin with this as a bachelor's. I can continue with this for specifically, and if I wanted to stay what's called a technician, a fisheries technician, where you do more of like, I wouldn't say just like the laborious type of work, but the field work specifically, and some of the work that's much more technical. That's why they call it a technician. And they work with me, the biologist. I would just, you know, go for the bachelor's kind of role, but I knew from an early time on that it's like, well, they want, you know, more of somebody who has a master's, and in some situations maybe a PhD, but much more so like having a master's. So I knew kind of early on that I was like, all right, I'm going to be in this for sort of the long haul. But I mean, I figured it out that, you know, it was kind of the right fit for me, because like you kind of get the itch, the learning bug, and it kind of never escapes you. Uh, as far as some of the stuff where like, you know, Nick realizing like, you know, like, oh, I wanted to be in wildlife, and he had like all these other sorts of yeah, things. Like for me, straight up, it was pretty highly focused. Like it wasn't the charismaticness of the cute megafauna animals that are like, oh, they're cute and cuddly, big eyes, you know. It was just like, I want to be in the water. I want to see the slime. I want the science. I was just like the freak. Like, just, I mean, I get no offense, but I was just like, yeah, this is what I, you know, it was kind of like the dirty job. And I was just like, yeah, I want it. So, but yeah, I guess that was kind of how I kind of approached it. And that also helped me to kind of forge a little bit more forward and help me plan a little bit better, because I knew it was going to be sort of a journey. And you know, you not everybody has the same sort of pathway, but it typically is like, you know, it's not all just going to be your schooling and then you're there. It's going to be like schooling, seasonal jobs, finish school, maybe job there, and then grad school, and then, you know, your transition towards really your career as it goes. And it's different for every sort of job that you go to. Like Nick's is probably a little bit different, because I mean, Nick, you went to the private sector after you finished school, correct?
Yeah, yeah. I spent 2 years in the private sector right out of college. I spent a few summers in the private sector during college while I was at
Mm-hmm.
UW Stevens Point. Yeah, it kind
What's
of
the
molds
private
you.
sector? What's the private sector
So
for
so
natural resources?
what I did, I was a procurement forester for a private sawmill
Oh,
in
okay.
in Wapaka.
Mhm.
Anything outside of like a government agency is what we call a private sector, whether
Mm-hmm.
being for in forestry realm, like a logging company, that's a private sector thing. A consulting forester, a guy that's only solely himself going out there to work with private landowners to mark trees. That's more of the private sector thing. So there's a lot of options. Stevens Point, UWSP, they offer all those things for students in between semesters. There's opportunities for internships They're always offering, I worked up in the UP, Upper Peninsula of Michigan for a summer, and if you ever if you thought mosquitoes were bad here, they're really bad up there.
Mhm.
Yeah, and if you could stick around and still like forestry after being lifted off the ground by mosquitoes, you're set.
Well, this is helpful because I think we sometimes get kind of tunnel vision and we think that, well, if you become a forester, if you go into fisheries, you work for the DNR. That's it. Like, it's government jobs and that's it.
Oh no,
Yeah,
yeah,
and that's
there's plenty of opportunity.
even in the fisheries field. Like, I mean, there's a lot of consultants that get into that world. It's not just that. I mean, you can go into university research jobs, but there's also, folks that do stock assessment in oceans, working for private companies that work with fisheries, but also consultants that do stuff, whether and how it reflects working with agencies that are, like the EPA, but they're outside. They're like working with groups that are trying to keep themselves, intact for like the environmental impacts that they do. And there's like a lot of folks that do consulting, because in some situations maybe like states don't have that much of a specific budget for the workforce, and so sometimes they rely on consultants to answer other questions. And so, I mean, it just kind of just all depends on where you want to go. And so,
Yeah. Same with forestry. Yeah, the county has a forestry committee or department, and you can work your way all the way up to federal. There's county, state, federal, and it's different aspects of forestry. You can do fire, and you can enter a whole new world there too. There's private companies that handle strictly with prescribed burns, uh, consulting firms that consulting foresters that only do timber sales. And you can, diving into the urban sector, you can be an urban forester. That's all private sector stuff too. So it's quite a variety of stuff you can do within forestry outside of state government, county, or federal. That there's if you want if you want diverse jobs, forestry's got it. You got everything you're looking for to mold of what you want to be in the future.
Cool.
mhm.
So,
And even like go ahead. I didn't mean to.
no, keep going.
I was just gonna say, like, even within like our field and within our agency, like uh, in fisheries, it's like a very dynamic workforce. It's not just like fish managers or biologists and technicians. There's people that are supervising everything. There's people that are a part of things on the propagation side, which is hatcheries. There's folks that do specifically what's called creel survey, which is like assessment of anglers. There's folks that are totally driven towards what's called operations, which they maintain our fleet of electrofishing boats and our gear. And it's such a dynamic thing. And then we also have like a whole portion of what we do we work together in collaboration constantly. It's called fish research, and that's actually what I started in with the DNR in 2013. Was fish research, where basically we were an in-house way of how we can answer questions and make basically things easier for people that work in the fish management field, and come up with the tools for them to make their world easier. So
Cool. Good. Well, so what do you think are the qualities or the attributes that make someone successful in these fields?
Nick, you first.
I was gonna say you first.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
That's a really tough one. Yeah, looking at I guess education wise, I guess I got my bachelor's degree from in forest management from UWSP. And in my position, you need to have a 4-year bachelor's from a SAF, Society of American Foresters accredited school. Stevens Point offers that right in my back door. It's an amazing program, nationally known. So that certainly helped being close to home and going through that program. but you need that 4-year degree for, in my position, to be a forester. And within those couple years, you need to pass a series of exams. They're not too terrible, but you definitely have to study for them. And that's your sophomore, junior, senior year. You have to pass these exams, and you have to level up each time you pass. You get to the next one, then the next one. They increasingly get harder. And along with those exams, you have to pass a series of tree ID with each year you have to take it. And then obviously the core curriculum, civiculture. I definitely dived into the fire management stuff because that kind of piques my interest, going through school with Dr. Cook and Dr. Masters, and the great teachers, great program. So obviously I had to take advantage of that. But I guess some of the qualities would just be, organized is a big one. Just try to be as organized as you can. Outgoing, be a hard worker. It's a lot of times you're gonna wake up in the morning and not want to go in the woods, but you just got to go in the woods anyway and get some work done. And it definitely helps when you have a good source of education from an awesome school like UWSP gave.
Tim, what do you think? Are there other qualities or attributes that make one or are important if someone's going to be successful as a fisheries biologist?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think one thing is fisheries biologists can come from anywhere. It doesn't have to be just some guys like I grew up doing this sort of thing. It could literally be like I have one of our best quantitative researchers that we have, and he's always willing to go out in the field with me. He's from Eritrea, and he came here, and he's probably like one of the smartest people I've ever met. And his name's Eob, and he actually has done a lot for the department here. But it's like I feel like that's just to stay open-minded about things. It's if folks really want to try something and they put their mind to it, they can make it happen. But yeah, being open-minded, I think, is really important. Where you go, what you do, the people that you're going to work with, I think that it really sets you apart. Kind of like some of the stuff that Nick was saying, like having a good work ethic. It's like if you love doing what you do, become disciplined at it, stay organized, be efficient about things. You know, when you're a young kid, especially even when you're starting college, you can be a little bit loose and stuff. But like, I mean, if you have goals that you want to obtain, like, eventually you have to become a little bit more serious. So like, I mean, it's okay to have your adventure and so on, and that's all part of the situation. But like, I mean, it's got to keep this stuff in your back mind that like, I'm going to be doing this sort of thing. So
Yeah.
Be kind of like some of the stuff that Nick mentioned and about these organizations where you become like your specialist. Be willing to try to work in an organization where you can volunteer, and a professional organization. I have one called the AFS, American Fisheries Society, and I've met a lot of friends, met a lot of people across the country. I've got a bunch of scientific publications because of that, so I'm growing CV. But that's like the mechanism of how I was able to like put that sort of research out there. So just getting involved with that. They have that at the college level, so that's an important thing. Also, I think just like in this field especially, you don't really anticipate it at first, but I think you should come in with the willingness that you're going to be in a social situation. Not everybody's going to start out being like, oh, I'm a great talker, but eventually you kind of learn those like social skills. And like, I thought I wasn't a great talker, but look at me right now. I'm on Zoom and I'm talking to you guys, and it's, I'm trying to make the most out of it. And so I think it's just, just having that little bit of motivation to try to get to that point. And, because you end up doing a lot of that, like managing what I manage. It's like I said before, it's like people. And so you're working with people, and you're basically the conduit to like, achieve your whatever your management goals may be. So like it's stakeholder engagement is a huge thing. I would say, yeah, as far as that, I can't really think like, I know there's some other sort of qualities that I could mention, but like some of them are learned and you'll gain them over time as you develop as a professional. And some of them are just like, it's what kind of gets you to where you are and just how you are as a person. So like most people don't know that they have it in them yet, but then they'll tap into it and they'll be like, oh my God, this is perfect. So I guess you'll never know until you try it.
True.
Yeah.
I
I would
like that
add,
distinction of things that are learned versus sort of like who you are.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I would add would be a sponge. As
That's a
while you're
good
in
one.
college, try to learn as much as you can. That'll translate surprisingly amazing in your professional field. And when you get to that profession and in your career, learn from people around you, learn from your mistakes. I think that's a huge one too. Start developing your slideshows of the experiences that you've been through, the mistakes that you made, what you do different. I think that's a huge quality to have. And also, yeah, public speaking. That's a huge one too. As a forester, you think you'd go hide in the woods all day, but that's not true. You might be in a classroom teaching people or meeting a landowner at their property, and you're a forester and a teacher. It's what I have come to think of my career as. I'm trying to explain what I'm doing, why we're doing this, what are our goals, what's our end state of this forest going to be, and try to articulate that as best I can to people. So we're natural resource professionals. We're also educators as well. So that's a huge part of it.
I'd say, yeah, especially in the last like 20 years of the agency, as we become more engaged with folks. I mean, let's just face it. I mean, we do have a little bit of a stigma that, like, oh, the DNR, I hate the DNR and such, they just did stuff without us knowing, that's not how people sound, but some people get really upset about us for certain things. But like we've learned over the last 20 years or so, it's like we need to involve people as much as we can and work with people as much as we can side by side, and that sort of cooperation goes far. So like all the stuff that we were saying, like with what you're talking about, Nick, and like articulating yourselves to folks that we're working adjacent with or wanting to be involved, it's a huge thing. So it's especially, I can't even emphasize that more. Yeah.
What does an average day look like, if there even is an average day? Nick, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question. Since March, I don't think there really is an average day anymore. But yeah, it
It's
can
the
it can
same day
vary.
over and over again.
Yeah,
Groundhog Day.
sometimes it feels like it for sure. Well, it can really depend. I'd say in the fall, usually my mornings are taken up by meeting landowners at their property, and doing like a walkthrough through their property, describing things that they can do to enhance it, whether that be a timber sale or a planting plan, if they want to convert an old crop field into a plantation of some sort. And then after that, take a lunch in my car somewhere in a cool spot with a nice view, and then head out to uh, the public land, the Mead Wildlife Area. That's where I do the bulk of my work. And I'm either got my boots on and I'm walking through an aspen stand doing some cruising, or I'm checking up on some timber sales, some logging operations going on. And then I can end my day at the garage at the end of the day, and the whole day is spent in the woods. So that's kind of like a typical day. I'd say in the spring it's a lot different. In the spring, I've got all my fire PPE on, my Nomex, my fire resistant clothing. I got my truck all ready for wildfires and ready for a response, and I'm listening to the radio. And if a fire happens anywhere in Marathon County, and we're expected to go and suppress that fire. So kind of switching roles into that preparation, which takes a little bit of time and to knock off the dust and make sure you're mentally prepared for it. So things look a little different. In the summertime, we're I'm trying to avoid the field a little bit, but sometimes it's kind of impossible, just because things need to get done, and that's a bug sprayed filled day usually. But yeah, pretty much the same thing. Walking through the woods, looking at trees, and otherwise meeting landowners at their property and talking about stuff.
What about you, Tim?
Well, so it's kind of one of those things that depends on the time of the year, so the chronology or phonology of what's happening, at said specific time. One thing that remains constant is typical communications and administrative duties that I have as like a property manager, as I manage specific what are called state fisheries properties or spring pond lands that are basically around, and environmental review and assessment, and that's in permitting type stuff. That stays fairly consistent. Sometimes it's a little bit more busier. That's more the administrative side of things where, got to make decisions and work with folks like Nick or folks in water quality, wildlife, you name it. But it's, doing a lot of that sort of work, and then mixing that with, depending what time of the year is, if it's springtime, the ice is thawing off, we're doing our springtime assessment duties. So that's the monitoring and assessment work. So we're fike netting in flowages and in lakes, and we're electrofishing at night, which is a way that we sample fish. It sounds kind of like, wow, that sounds really dangerous on a boat, and does it hurt the fish? And it's a relatively safe thing that it's almost like anesthesia for fish. I could go down that road, but I'm not going to go explain it. But like, we do some very exciting things. Some of it's a little bit dangerous, but like, we're extremely safe, and we're trained in this sort of thing as professionals. But that's a very typical thing in the springtime, where we do this assessment work, and that transitions to stuff in the summer where we're not in lakes or rivers as much. We're doing stuff in cold water streams. I'm working with trout. And then we're doing population assessments, habitat monitoring, and all that stuff. Transition to the fall, it's back into flowages, doing stuff with what we call like juvenile assessments. So looking at younger fish and looking how fish recruit into populations and such. And we're in between that time. So like, basically all in the field for like any of the months that there is basically not a bit of crust on top of the water. So like right now it's cold and we have ice. And so I'm not really out on the water too much unless I'm monitoring dissolved oxygen in certain lakes that are prone to maybe having fish kills. And so during the winter time, we're doing a lot of planning. I'm doing a lot of analyses and reports for all the data that I've collected, and working with various stakeholder groups, whether it's Trout Unlimited, a lot of muskie angler groups, and lake associations to develop lake management plans and to see where we are as far as lake management. So there's a lot of meetings and stuff going on. So we try to, on purpose, design our days to be as efficient as possible, and for us to be getting the most bang for our buck, and basically what we do at certain times of year. And so if people, try calling us at certain times of year, it's like, I can never get a hold of said person. It's like, well, we might be doing something, but that's for a specific reason. So it's just, but that's also what makes the job sort of interesting. It's like you could look forward to certain things, and at certain times it's like, well, you're just kind of, doing what you would do anytime, I guess, like right now, except I do it in a room, or I'm actually not in the office right now, Nick. I'm in my house.
I can't hear you, so I knew that one.
Yeah.
Tim,
But yeah, go ahead.
what's one thing that you wish, when you started your career explorations, what's one thing that you wish someone would have told you?
Good question. Should I answer that first, Nick?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Tim,
go for it, Tim.
Go ahead.
All right, because I'm all like juiced up, and I'm excited because I was like, wow, that is a great question.
That is a great question.
I think it's good to be well-rounded, like wherever, if you just decide to stay in your do your bachelor's or go to do your master's or whatever, like I feel like go in, choose your curriculum of what you want to do, whether it's forestry, wildlife, fisheries, water quality, soils, whatever it may be, and consider all the possible classes that you need, but then also consider what's on the periphery as like, oh, I'm going to take a GIS class. So like geographic information systems, which is like, I mean, that just makes you that much more qualified to do the little bit of extra things. Or like, I'm going to, as technologies advance beyond just GIS, I'm going to take a little bit of training in how to, I don't know if they offer this in college, they might start offering this, but like, I'm going to become a drone pilot. It's like we take air sensory photo information nowadays, and we're looking at ways that, we could, basically helps us become more efficient. So like things like that. Any way that you can expand it or make yourself more well-rounded to fit you in the position as needed. Like, oh, I'm going to try to do an experience where so maybe it's not as typical, but I'm going to be an undergraduate and I'm going to do a research project on the side with a professor as sort of like a little mentorship kind of thing. Just other things like that, and some stuff that you maybe wouldn't expect. I know a lot of people that work within basically my field that are specialists in scuba, and now they have like their own scuba team within their portion of my bureaus, because it's important for various reasons. So like, I mean, there's similar things like that for Nick. I'd say like probably pesticide application, right, Nick? Like you for forestry.
Yep. I'm pesticide certified as well. So that's a really good quality to have. And yeah, like Tim said, um, I don't know, Tim, are you all done, or you want me to
Oh,
keep
good.
going?
Yeah, no, we can mix it up. We want to. It's all right, Nick.
Okay.
I feel like I'm just here watching. So go ahead.
Yeah, that, like you said, that's a great question. What advice would I give myself? I'd say invest in some good boots. As a side note, yeah, you go through a lot of boots. You walk a lot of miles, and those boots will take you to some cool places, I might add. But I would say, yeah, definitely align your curriculum of what you're planning on doing, where you see yourself, and then sprinkle in those goodies like GIS. Another huge thing I would have told myself would be get involved with academic communities. UWSP offers fire crew, or they have fire crew in Stevens Point. They have SAF, the student chapter there at Stevens Point. Getting involved with them will open up a wide array of opportunities for you, whether that be a weekend project to go plant trees, or to suit up in Nomex and go burn a person's property to achieve a wildlife objective. Those
By
things are
property, you mean their forest stand, not their house, right?
not their stand.
Just, I'm just
Like a
sorry.
field. Yeah,
There
I should
might still be a
explain.
wildlife objective there, though.
Well, in the forestry realm, you just kind of you burn stuff. It's good. Yeah, it's all good stuff.
Sorry, I had to, man.
Yeah, I would say try to get involved as much as you can from early on. I got involved, I'd say my junior year, which is in my opinion kind of late in the game, just to establish relationships and kind of get your foot in the door. It takes a little bit of time to figure out what's going on and things like that. The sooner you get in it, the better, the more relationships you're going to make. So I think that's what I would advise somebody entering in, or just beginning their career, for sure.
I agree with that 100%. Like especially if you're when you start out as a student, you may not be taking a lot of the core classwork that you would as you do when you're like maybe a sophomore, junior, senior. And the quickest way to get you into being like, I love what I'm doing here, and I'm also I'm networking with people, getting to know people in the field, and also just seeing like, do I really like this? So like, it's good to get that out of your way early by joining some of these like academic, I wouldn't say academic communities, but like extracurricular professional societies that are part of these clubs that are on campus, like American Fishery Society or SAF for you, and just being like, all right, this is fun. This is, I could really dig on this. And it really kind of helps you to mold to be like, I really do want to go into this. And you kind of get that in your system early, instead of, some people go through their whole college career and be like, and they finally get to try it out and they're like, I don't even like this. And so it really helps you to make some efficient decisions early on. So I couldn't recommend that more. So that was a really good point, Nick.
Good advice.
That's what I'm here for.
So I feel like we could probably talk forever about this, but I need to probably
Probably.
wind us down because you all have jobs to get back to. But so is there anything else that you'd want to be sure that students know as they think about their career exploration and just, yeah, wonder even how to go about that career exploration?
Yeah, I'll take that one. I guess one thing it would be, forestry can take you to some really cool places. I was lucky enough to land a job right in my hometown where I grew up and went to school. But the possibilities are endless. You can go across country. You can go out west to go fight fires. That's all within that forestry realm. You can go work in a big city, work with urban trees. That's a possibility. Um, I would say just be open of what you never know what you're going to expect. I went into my career, in the workforce in the private sector, not knowing, I'd be a ranger for the Department of Natural Resources one day. The stars just aligned in that way. And I just kind of took it and ran with it. And it's been great ever since. But, I had the opportunity to go west to go fight fires for a couple weeks, and, just the terrain and the different landscape than here, it just broadens my horizon. And like I said, that slideshow that you keep developing, that's a valuable thing to have, is that experience of things that you've gone through, mistakes you've made along the way, and just be a sponge, learn as much as you can from the veterans around you, from your coworkers, and enjoy every second of it. Forestry is fun. You're not always in the field all the time, but for the majority of your day, you might be. So
Great. What about you, Tim?
Let's see. So you brought out some great points, Nick. I think taking opportunities, making the most of opportunities. Some people just shut down certain things and just be like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready for that. Like, sometimes you got to take those little risks, and then they take you on the coolest adventure you've ever taken. And sometimes, yeah, maybe you're eating ramen for a bit, or living in a tent, but that's all. To me, that was all what makes the value behind what you've done and what you've earned, really. And so, like, I never thought that I would end up back here. Some people have it in their mind that it's like, I'm gonna do this here and I'm gonna be here, which is maybe not the best sort of mindset to kind of take. I think if you're going to be in this field, I mean, you can have goals that you want to end up in certain places, but I mean, that has to be sort of a long-term thing. Like, I didn't understand that I was going to be back here. I thought, like, it would be nice to be back in Wisconsin. I just ended back here. But like, my whole thing was like, if I have an opportunity to work outside and be mobile, it's like, I'm gonna go I worked in Idaho, I've worked in Iowa, the UP. It's being willing to get out of your bubble is humongous, and it's gonna make you better as a professional, make you more rounded off, and really expand upon your experiences, and let you see the world. And that develops you, in my mind, as a better person, just working around a whole bunch of different folks. And that's, I feel like that if you can't do that, then maybe you should try, I don't want to say like you should try a different career, but like, you kind of have to suss that out initially, is like, is this for me? Because like, in order for you to find experiences, sometimes, especially in, like, we have a pandemic right now. And so, like, if it's the winter time and it's not warm, you can't be outside to do work safely, or or you're forced to be in an office, like that's, you know, you're kind of out of luck in certain aspects. And it's a lot of doom and gloom for some students because they don't really know the future, but like, you know, they can always go to certain places where it's like, all right, it's safe to do work here because you're so far south and such. And so like, you know, the pandemic's not going to be forever, but it's willing to work within the constraints of the real world. I think that's the biggest thing. So
You know, I've done a few of these career conversations now across a number of different occupations, and every single person I've talked to has basically said what you two just said. That is, stay open, be flexible, right? Experience as much as you can,
Mhm.
and then, you know, and do the other things you talked about too. Stay organized, right? Develop your people skills. But just then, you know, be open to what comes your way, and you'll see lots of opportunities and you'll enjoy your career.
I'd
Yeah.
say like exactly like, and like it's I'd say I don't want to give like a percentage of people, but there's a lot of people that, you know, want to go in this field and they end up going to school for it, but they want to go back to their hometown, and their education gets pretty much chucked away. And so like they pretty much have to have those attributes in order for them to make it work. And so I mean, if you just, I think that's just the huge thing, and that's going to make them better as, you know, whatever that they plan to go into. So, yeah.
Well, this has been awesome. You guys have been terrific. I appreciate it very much. I like too how you you know, dovetailed with each other on a lot of the answers, and you helped our students and prospective students to understand what's involved in your two careers. So thank you.
Thank you. It
All right.
was awesome.
Well, I'm going
Thank
to
you very
sign
much.
off to what was that?
Thank you very much.
Oh, well, I'm the lucky one because you guys volunteered to do this. So thanks. All right. So just to sign off for our viewers, if they have any other ideas about other careers that they want us to explore, we have a dedicated email address, career.conversations@uwsp.edu, and they should send along any feedback or any ideas for other folks or careers to explore. All right. Thank you both. And goodbye to our viewing audience.